Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of IBL on Deck, sponsored by Rawlings. My name is Jackson Farough. Great to be with you once again here on IBL on Deck after a very brief hiatus. Had a lot of stuff going on, had some busy times in the last couple weeks, but we're right back at it here, continuing our team-by-team series. And today we're going to be talking about the Guelph Royals. And to discuss the Guelph Royals and the IBL as a whole, we're going to bring in Neil Srivastava. Now, Neil, I really appreciate you joining us today. Now, you've had a lot of different duties in the Guelph Royals organization. You've been around baseball your whole life. Tell us a little bit about where you started, how you got started, and what was the first baseball-related duty that you had?
Okay, well, yeah, thanks again. Thanks for having us on the show anyways, Jackson, as far as this stuff goes. But yeah, as far as I actually started with the Royals, I guess, with baseball and Guelph back in 1993. So that just tells you how long I've been involved with the programs and everything else in certain capacities. I actually started as a high school co-op with McLean Hunter Television. I was doing my co-op placement there. I was interested in going to broadcasting at Conestoga College once I was done high school. So that seemed like the next logical step is to get some practical experience in a television environment as far as that went. So that's how that got started. And then over time, we got to know the people that were running the baseball teams and everything else in town. And then got to know Billy Craven, Walter McGregor, and all those people that were running baseball in Guelph. And they're all volunteers. And Billy was just up the street from actually, I grew up just up the street from Hastings Stadium on London Road. So it was like Billy was on Dublin Street. He'd always see us and say, "Hey, you're that friend with that paperboy guy," and everything else. I'm like, yeah. It's like, well, you should come out to the games when you're not working the baseball thing. We can put you to work for something else. And it just spiraled out from there. He had the one night he had me doing that in the cookout, doing the barbecue or something. The one night he had me doing fries. And then I eventually wound up doing bat boy duties because I guess somebody had gotten hurt or something. And so I was doing bat boy duties and running the 50-50 tickets up and down the aisles, the lines as that was going on that first year. And then that was also the first year they won the championship, that was something to be seen. It was the first one in such a long time in the city as well. So it was really surreal. We would see people bringing in couches at 3 o'clock in the afternoon to sit on. Like we'd be doing the Royals baseball school, and there are people bringing couches, bringing lawn chairs. They go place them in their spots, and then go home and come back around 7 o'clock and go sit down in a spot. Like There were literally 2 kids that brought a couch in. And the funniest thing is that they're actually former Royals. They're actually minor league baseball players by the name of Jamie Pogue and Sean Pearson. I don't know if you know those names at all. No. Pogue was with the Cardinals organization. He was actually their bullpen catcher for the last a little while anyways. And Sean Pearson got drafted by the Jays. Signed as a free agent with the Blue Jays and was involved in their organization. Now he's the vice president of Danby Products here in town as well. So some really strong baseball ties. I remember following those 2 guys carrying their couch in. That's a place to sit.
Yeah.
It was just one of those fun things as far as that stuff goes. And then over the years, it just grew from there. And then when Larry Pearson was Sean's father took over the team in 1997, he asked me to get more actively involved. Then he bounced an idea off me in 98. He says, "Okay, why don't you become the general manager?" I was like, "Okay, I'm just out of high school and I'm like 21 years old. Now I'm the general manager of the Guelph Royals of the Intercounty Baseball League." I was just like, "Okay, that's a little daunting, a little stressful," but we got through it. And it was a very valuable learning experience at that time. And and then again, when it came around again, when I was 35, it seemed to be a little more seasoned and had a better grasp on things and how things worked in the league as well as that stuff goes. But it was an interesting, I don't know, another set of challenges as far as that goes too, because my first week on the job, we had to trade away Sean Riley. Yeah. So that was not fun. That was not fun. Literally, they had terminated the current manager, I think the Monday night or something. Dissension in the ranks of some of the veteran players and everything else decided they weren't going to play for Guelph anymore. So they had asked for releases or asked to be traded or whatever else. So that was pretty much what we walked into Tuesday morning. Wednesday morning, everything else had just got the wheels in motion as far as that stuff goes. And I think by the following Wednesday or Tuesday, they had moved over to Toronto for some players and everything else. And it was just it was a very stressful week because we have a relationship with Sean as far as that stuff goes, just outside. Thanks, Paul. But as far as that, it was very stressful. I was worried it was going to put a strain on our friendship outside. We used to play Halo for crying out loud at 2 o'clock in the morning, 12 hours a night. I just remember those nights with him and everything else. A couple of my buddies were playing. Well, that's how we met Sean. Actually, we didn't know he was a ball player or anything else, but just like, "Yeah, we got to go to the baseball games." Like, what team are you guys working with? And he said he was from Burlington and he worked for Hamilton. I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah, we're in town next Tuesday night or something." So that's how I got to meet Riley back then.
Now, tell me a little bit more about the GM. So you get kind of a trial by fire, I could call
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
When you walk in there, are you projecting confidence, but nervous sort of inside, or are you just blatantly saying like, guys, I'm obviously new to this, but I think we're gonna, I'm a little nervous to start things off. Obviously, I'm 21, sort of fresh faced,
Yeah.
new in this. What was kind of your mentality, I guess, heading into that job, and how did it change? Having to really kind of make some big decisions there early on.
As far as that stuff goes, Larry was still very much a hands-on owner, so he would do
Mm,
most of that stuff. It was just like, okay, make sure these guys all get paid on the buses and everything else.
right.
It wasn't as much as go find player A, player B, or everything else, but just make, hey, I got so and so coming with a contract to sign a contract at 4 o'clock. Make sure you're there. Take
Right.
the contract, go fax it off, or everything. Because back then it wasn't digital; it has to be
Mm,
faxed to me before game time and everything else, and just make sure everybody's legitimately on the roster and stuff like that. But it was different. It was interesting to go into the league meetings the first couple of times and just see the John Copuses of the world and everything else that were enshrined in the intercounty for so long. And it was just like, okay, it's a totally different thing behind that curtain there as far as what you see out in the field compared to what actually goes on in the boardroom as well.
yeah.
It was eye opening, put it that way.
Now, out of all the roles you've had, right? You talk
Yeah.
about whether it's flipping burgers or being the GM. What's
Yeah.
the favorite one you've had, and why would that be the case? Do you think?
Honestly, there's been a couple of different things. Like watching when I took over the GM again when Jim Rooney owned the team again, it was just as far as that, it was a different set of roles for me. As far as I think it was a different standard. The Royals hadn't been doing too much as far as when I took over that and everything else. So the following year, we really got to leave our mark as far as some younger players and some prospects and some imports. We were able to make some better decisions as far as okay. I wasn't just handed the keys like the first year. It just felt like okay, let's just get through the season the best we can. Let's fill the voids as much as we can. And we took Brantford at the time to a seventh game, which was just crazy. Like we were not expected to do anything, but here we were. Lo and behold, the little team that could knocked off the defending Red Sox a couple of times in a row. Remember Mike Bonanno pacing down the front of the stadium at Hastings like in the sixth game, and like I don't know. Eighth inning when it was like 3-2 still. He was pacing up and down going, oh, God. I'm sitting in the press box, and I was doing the play-by-play or something at the time, plus doing the scoring. It was just like, one of the corner, I was just watching him squirm a little bit because it just felt good to be on the other end of that for once. But I think as far as that goes, it was just, those were kind of the moments, and watching somebody like a Gavin Free that came up from Alabama and pitched for us, Jason Martin from California, who actually, I don't remember that $1 million arm movie that Disney put out and everything else.
Mm-hmm.
He actually was in the contest in Southern California for that. He threw, I think, the week before he came down here or something. But as far as that, he was worried it was going to wreck his eligibility as far as the contest goes. But it was just those guys were great. They were a great bunch of people. We had John Yari as a coach. We had Bruce Yari who went to the Reds organization. I think he's still in their farm system somewhere. So yeah, we had some really talented young players come through at that time. So we were very fortunate.
How would you say, maybe since you entered the league, kind of started doing stuff with it compared to where it is now, how much has the IBL changed?
First off, the biggest change is going back to the wood bat. Wood bat I think it made it more legitimate. Just as far as how to sell it, and how to market it and everything else, much more legitimate as far as a baseball league round. Okay, you hear that familiar ping or that horrible metallic ping. If I go past a kid's game now, it's like, what is that noise? Can you stop it, please? Like, what is this? But thankfully, I think it's from Bantam upwards. It's all wood bats up in here in Ontario now, so it's like you don't hear that anymore. But yeah, I think that was probably the biggest thing. And then as far as even the social media aspects and just being more interactive and more accessible to fans, I think that's definitely changed more. It's more like as far as now the stats would only get released one time a week or everything else, and it was just like Herb Burrell would be in there at all hours doing whatever on his computers, his massive Excel database or whatever it was at the time. I remember handing in those score sheets and being like, "Oh God, please don't call me about it having an error in the score sheet somewhere." Just because you had to read it out by hand after you'd done everything and transpose it, and then we finally got to Excel, and then we've gone to point streaks. Now it's all automatic, but still, it's been nice to see those changes happen over time.
Yeah, and you talk about, obviously the league needing to adapt and be more, social and connect with its fans more. Kind of that leads into, Twitch and streaming. And I mean, we're streaming right now, but you are pretty active on Twitch. What opportunities do you see for the league when it comes to, not just this stuff, but also something like Twitch and the kind of sports content you can create on that medium?
I was fortunate enough again when I came back to the Royals a couple of years ago. Sean Fuller was like, You want to do the I pitched it to him, said, you want to do a couple of games live and everything else? I was like, yeah, sure, we'll try it and everything else. And when we were on Mixer at the time, so I put it to my Mixer channel. We also posted to Facebook and everything else. We went live fairly regularly, and I think the one night we had 6,000 viewers at one point because we got featured on the front page.
Right.
It was just like, okay, there's 6,000 people watching this from gosh knows where. So it was just part of that stuff. And we had players like Angel Villanueva from the Dominican Republic and everything else, whose families wouldn't be able to obviously be watching it live, but they would watch the replay the next day. So they'd be sit there and you get these comments on the Facebook feed afterwards and just like, where'd they come from? They weren't, of course, in English, but they were praising Angel and everything and how the team was doing. So it was just kind of nice. It was nice to see this little tiny league in Ontario. It's not so tiny, but it's getting a better worldwide audience as far as that stuff goes, and it's starting to reach other markets that are probably starved for baseball, and even now with COVID and everything else, probably much more starved for baseball.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. You make a good point there about families as well being able to connect to the players and just that sort of bridging the gap a little bit in coverage. Speaking of coverage, tell us about the Home Run Derby last year. You were involved in the event. Obviously, it's been a while since that now, but I think maybe it did get glossed over a little bit just because, there was a pandemic going on and not much baseball going on. And then the Legacy Classic was soon after. But let's talk about the Home Run Derby. You were part of covering it. What was it like to actually cover live baseball?
Well, it was a little different because, again, there's no stands. There's no fans in the stands. So you're not getting reactions, but you get player reactions and everything else. And the guys are all you can see the camaraderie. Even just against each other as far as the IBL goes. The guys were still high-fiving each other when they hit crazy home runs or whatever else. Brownlee and everything else. Cleveland always comes and puts on a show. Riley was kind of under the gun. He felt the pressure of the home field and everything else. And I think his batting practice picture by the last round was done too. So, and then of course there was a couple of extra inning frames in there as well. So guys had to you had to get back up to that level again and try to amp it up again to try to get two more over the fence. And we were exhausted. It wasn't exactly a cold day either. So it was just like, okay, sun's beating down. It's 3:00 in the afternoon. We're trying to get baseballs over the fence. But it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun. And I think Dylan Baker, who actually was nice enough to come down and do the interviews and everything else, he's a very promising young man as far as that stuff goes. So definitely keep an eye on Dylan. That's all I can say. I wish I had that drive at my age back when I was his age as far as that stuff, because that would have just been night and day as far as that stuff goes. Make sure you guys are watching his 211's podcast or whatever it is. Definitely goes. I got to plug that for him. He's a great kid.
Yeah, shout out Dylan Baker. Yeah, he's awesome stuff. He's hosted this show before too. Does a lot of online stuff. He's a great kid, and I too wish I had his drive when I was his age as well. Can't say I did. Let's talk a little bit about the Royals this year in 2021. If the season goes under the assumption that it does, what are you looking forward to most about this Royals team in 2021?
I think we're going to turn a lot of heads. I think we've got a really young squad coming together. I think Dino Romero's gone out and above. And it's going to be nice to have Dino back in the ballpark again, because of course Dino back in the early 90s was very much at the forefront of what was going on in baseball and golf and everything else. And he brought the Pro Joys to the Twin Championship. He brought the Senior Royals back to the championship the first time since 1970. So it's, as far as that stuff, there's going to be some excitement there. He's very passionate about baseball. I think you're going to see I don't want to call it his waffle stomp. He's got to tell me that story one of these days. The waffle stomp thing that happened in Brantford or something. It's just, everybody keeps talking about that, but I don't know the story behind that. But I think you're going to see definitely a different, different mindset, a different way we approach the baseball game. It's not going to be we're not going to hit as many home runs as we used to. We're not going to have as many power hitters as we did back in the lineup. Because again, Riley's and everything else have gotten older. Riley has a family responsibilities. Justin and Terrasano, those guys like that, Jeff McLeod, they're getting older. They get starting families of their own. So, they're not going to be there as often as they are, if they're there at all this year. Because, again, we're not sure what's going to happen as far as COVID protocols and whatever else, workplaces. I know Sean has been trying to get into the fire departments in a couple places. I think he finally got a job somewhere in that profession. So he might not be there all the time. So it's going to be time for younger guys to step up and, maybe make a name for themselves.
That's it, man. That's the IBL, right? Sometimes the vets, you need to supplement them with some young players coming through, and like you said, going to get some opportunities there. Let's talk a little bit about where the Royals play, Hastings Stadium in 2021. Now, if fans are allowed to do so to get back into the parks, can you give us any updates or anything Royals fans should know about Hastings Stadium this year and the fun times that could be expected ahead?
Well, right now in the city of Guelph, as of this morning, we're at 52.3% vaccinated in the first wave. So it's 133,000 people have had their first doses of vaccination in the Royal City. So again, hats off to the WGGs and as far as doing that, as far as public health doing their job and getting those vaccinations rolled out. And again, thanks to the city of Guelph and everybody else for doing their part, even the citizens of Guelph, keeping them wearing the mask, keeping their distances, and following all the social protocols. But again, if you get a chance to come to the ballpark, don't expect any of those things to be let up on. You're going to be probably sitting in assigned seating, or as far as reserve seating, you're not going to be sit four to a row or anything like that. You're not going to be able to sit on top of each other. You're going to have to probably space out, maintain your distances. And there'll probably be some protocols as far as that goes. And we have to wait for the city and the province as far as to actually lift the restrictions and put us back into green before I think we're even allowed to take the field. So hopefully we'll get there sooner than later, but fingers crossed. That's the biggest thing. It's like we miss you guys, Royals fans. We miss you all. We miss seeing you at the ballpark. We miss watching your kids play catch down the lines. We miss watching these kids that were 4 and 5 are now probably like 7 or 8 now playing on baseball teams of their own. We miss seeing those things. We miss your interactions with the fans. We miss seeing the familiar faces when you're playing various teams like Ann from Brantford, Al from Toronto, all that stuff. We miss those people. It's because we don't get a chance to see them in everyday average ordinary day lives and everything. Right? We keep up with them on Facebook and everything else, but it's not the same. We miss Ann's cowbell. We missed the chance and everything else.
And as we see here, Paul also mentioning the Parks Department has been working diligently on the Hastings field. So a good update there. Be sure, fans, if you if you have any questions, be sure to throw them in the chat. We'll try to get to them here as we start to wrap things up. But before we go, I got a couple more questions for you, Neil. Having been around the organization for so long, do you have any interesting facts about the stadium that maybe a conventional fan might not know?
Well, so the original grandstand was built in 1924. They tore it down in the late 80s because it was falling apart. It was rotting. The wood structure and everything else was rotting in between. So they tore it down. They put up this little grandstand that's there, but they didn't put a roof on it. And that's really how baseball in Guelph got started. That's how Billy Craven and those guys, Paul Ante, that whole group got started, because they had to petition the city to get a roof put on the stadium, because it was like, okay, well, it's great. You've got a stadium now, but there's no roof on it. So what are you supposed to do in case it's raining or really sunny? Nobody's going to want to sit on the top rung of a metal stadium. So that's how it happened. David Hastings at the time, well, I guess he was looking to offload the team anyways. I guess he had enough about everything else. Plus, he was a barrister and a solicitor in town. He was a lawyer. He owned a lot of properties downtown. So I remember hearing this thing that baseball in Guelph had bought the team from David Hastings for $1. $1. That's all it would cost to buy it. They covered the whole team for $1. The whole program became theirs for $1. And they had a slew of volunteers. I remember working bingo halls on a Tuesday night and just coming home and smelling of cigarettes for hours. I would literally get changed at the doorway, put my stuff in a bag, and throw it in the laundry hamper, run it right downstairs, because just all you can smell was cigarettes. But I remember those days. I don't miss those days at all, but they made a lot of money for the team and everything else. And it was just, those early days were just, I don't know, I always look back to them fondly. We had some really good imports. We had Jerome Marguerre, we had Jay Powers, we had Eric Lasky. Lasky, of course, was very synonymous with the league as far as the mid-90s, and I think he won back-to-back MVPs in that time period as well. And just, they were characters, but they were also great ball players, and they were great people to learn from. As far as if you're a young ball player in our town, we were very fortunate to have some really great mentors growing up to work with.
Now, it looks like we have a fan question here from Doug. Any idea when you might be starting to sell season tickets, or is that all up in the air right now? Have to wait?
Doug, as far as season tickets, it's still up in the air. We still have to wait from the city to get the okay to even take the field to 2 practices and everything else. But trust me, we want to be out there as much as you do. I'd love to be hitting and say, tickets are on sale tomorrow. I wish I could do that, but we're not at that mindset right now. So we're just we're in a wait and see holding pattern right now. Hopefully by a couple of weeks from now, when we get to that 70. Public health in Guelph said we have to be 75% first vaccinations before we're allowed to start returning back to normal activities. So the numbers are climbing up there. So it's comforting and it's encouraging, but I don't know if it's going to get there in time. That's just the question is.
Signs of optimism for sure, but still a long ways to go. As you said, we're certainly not out of the woods yet. Neil, we really appreciate you joining us today here on IBL on Deck. We had a really great conversation. Great to hear your stories and learn more about you. And thanks so much for doing this.
My pleasure, Jackson. You guys take care. Keep wearing the mask, keep sanitizing, and stay safe, guys. We'll see you soon at the ballpark.
Will do, Neil. Thanks so much. See you in Guelph, hopefully at some point this year. All right, that was Neil Srivastava from the Guelph Royals. Had a great conversation with him about not just the organization, but really Guelph as a whole. Talk about a lifer in Guelph, especially when it comes to baseball. So thanks so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed it. For Jackson Farough, for the IBL, and of course Rawlings, we'll see you next time. Everyone, have a great evening.